everybody. Welcome to another Sunday morning conversation. Today, my guest is Emily Tato. She's an American professional triathlete. She has the unique distinction of not being able to race a pro race yet after taking a pro card back in 2019 because she has been injured a couple times and she's caught COVID twice and actually had long COVID the first time. So she's the first pro athlete I've met that had long COVID. And, it was very informative about the conversation and we learned about the struggle she's been going with. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hey, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
How are you?
good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. I'm gonna go for a run after we get done. I've been
Nice.
been kind of dragging ass on training lately, so it is what
I
it
feel
is.
like it's easy to go in those cycles, you know.
It is. You've been kind of on a hiatus for a while. Is it all because of injury?
Yeah, I've had a lot of, I'm not new to kind of injuries or setbacks or anything. I've had a number, but the last couple years have been quite tough. I had long COVID, which probably took me out for maybe about 15 months. And then pretty much as soon as I got back, I got like a hip impingement as well as some back issues. Came back from that and got COVID again. And then recently like got an ankle impingement. So
So
that has been the last 2 years.
that's horrible.
So pretty much from taking my elite license, I pretty much got COVID right after yeah.
So what I have yet to
It's
meet
fine.
anybody who's had long COVID. Tell me what it's been like for you, especially as a triathlete.
Yeah, so I was definitely one of the first people to get it. I work in healthcare and I got COVID in March 2020. And I think that what was hard is like we had so little information then, and I actually didn't realize I had COVID at the time, which is honestly probably why I ended up like in the situation I was in. I don't know if you want me to go into
You
that
can
whole
talk about
story.
whatever you want.
Okay. So basically, I had been doing, February, March of 2020. So now taking us 2 years back, I'd been doing like some hard bike workouts outside in the cold, which tend to give me a little bit of a cough. So, I'd had this cough, from probably about March onwards, but I didn't have any other symptoms at the time. And I was like, okay, like I'm sure this is just from working out when it's 30 degrees out, whatever. And so I kept working out and I felt fine until I all of a sudden didn't feel fine. And then my cough got really bad. And then, I went and got COVID tested and I had COVID and, I was super fatigued. Then it kind of hit me like a truck and I couldn't, walk across our apartment without needing a nap. And I, lost my taste and smell, had GI issues, just pretty much everything, any symptom. And I was sick for a couple weeks, laid on the couch for a couple weeks. Then I started like kind of slowly coming back to exercise. Things were going like, okay, but not great, but not bad, but just kind of plodding along. And then in about June or July of 2020, I started having a ton of issues breathing. Like I would, if I was on the bike and we went up a hill, so my power would go up a little bit. I would need to get off my bike and I would like wheezing and couldn't catch my breath and all this stuff. So then I went into an exercise physiologist, a cardiologist, and we did a whole workup of me and it ended up just that I had a lot of inflammation in my lungs. Inhaler protocol, I felt much better, got back to training. But then I still just didn't feel normal for a while. Like I definitely was still dealing with some chronic fatigue, a lot of GI issues, cramping stuff, various issues with my like organs, like just like weird stuff, insomnia, like just I don't know, a lot of stuff basically, which maybe started to resolve around maybe April, May or so of last year. Yeah, and then I was kind of gearing up to race again, and then I got injured in June. That ended up taking quite a while, quite a lot longer than we thought. I took off about 12 weeks of training this fall and then was feeling good. And I was out on a run in January with my fiance, and I said, you know, this is the first time I feel like my old self in about 2 years. And then I ended up getting COVID a few days later again. I mean, a lot of people were getting Omicron. I mean, you know, we were vaccinated, boosted, all that stuff, but you know, and it wasn't terrible while I had it. I took about 2 weeks off, but then it kind of re-flared up some old like lung symptoms. So I developed some asthma. I was having some chest pain. You know, a few things. It wasn't terrible. It would set me back maybe about 7 weeks, I think is what it ended up being, until I was pretty normal. So in the grand scheme of things, not a huge deal. You know, kind of missed my base phase this year, but we just started late and it is what it is. But I have an extra bone in one of my ankles, which I have impinged before. It sits behind my Achilles, like kind of in the joint. And I was jogging and, you know, doing some downhill, and then I finished and had a lot of pain in the ankle, and I've had it before. So we've been treating that. It definitely is getting better, and I'm hoping to be back racing in the middle of the summer, but it's been a time.
How common is that to have an extra bone in your ankle?
I don't actually know what the percentage is for it. It's called an os trigonum. It's like just like an accessory bone, which hadn't actually ever caused me any issue. I didn't even know I had it until I did this in 2019, the first time.
Is it a bone that is an extra, or is it one that we used to have and most of us evolved not to have?
That's a good question. I do not know. I mean, they refer to it as an accessory bone. It's kind of odd. Yeah, it kind of floats in the back of your ankle a little bit.
Does it cause like a weird fit with your shoes at all?
Not that I've noticed. No, I mean, you can't see it. It's like if here's your foot and then here's your Achilles, like here's the back of your ankle. It's like here. So it's like Achilles, but little bone, and then like your ankle joint. So when you run downhill, it can like get jammed into your joint and then kind of create inflammation in the joint. So kind of a weird problem to have.
Yeah, I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, I know like palmaris longus is
Yeah,
Yes.
the other this tiny muscle in your arm, your forearm. Yeah.
that a lot of people don't have anymore.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of an extra bone there before. That's definitely different.
I feel like I have a lot of things that are
Like that before. It's just there.
yeah, I had never caused a problem before, and I forget what percentage of the population has it.
I'm gonna have to Google it just to find out because I gotta know now. But yeah.
Yeah, it's called an os trigonum.
Okay. So back to the COVID. Did your fiance get COVID both times too?
He got it the second time. The first time, so that was when testing was not widely available. And he didn't, so I started to get symptoms in March, and then he wasn't able to get a test until May. So he tested negative. I think he might have had it, but was asymptomatic. I mean, I was coughing all over our apartment. So I don't know. But I mean, he never tested positive the first time. We did both get it the second time.
Okay. I'm one of those people who has yet to have it, but I just assume everybody's gonna get it at some point in their life. It's just
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's another wave kind of going now. So it's like, if you didn't get the Omicron variant the first time, and now a lot of people are getting it this time.
and nobody's wearing masks anymore, including myself. I only wear it a couple of different places. And it's like, all right, we've just kind of all been resigned to our fates that we're all going to get it at some point.
Yeah, I know. I do think a lot of people are gonna end up getting it.
As long as I'm not like hacking up a lung, I'd probably even race with it.
I wouldn't.
I just do it just because that, and I'm also cheap, and I wouldn't eat the entry fee.
Because I would say, I mean, as a PT, I mean, we've seen a lot of people that have really mild symptoms and then they come back to exercise too quickly or they work out through it and then they end up with like long COVID. You don't want long COVID.
No, I can tell from what you told me that I don't want long COVID.
Yeah.
So I've seen quite a few PTs over the last few years. I got hit by a Tahoe on my bike commuting to work head on, and I got out of it. So I was working with PTs for all the injuries that came with it, but as well as my balance. My balance is extremely screwed up. Like obviously, you know how riding on a TT bike is not always the easiest things to do, but when you're screwed up and you're in a headwind, it makes it really, really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard even if you hadn't gotten hit. And I looked a little bit into your story. So yeah, I saw that you got a pretty significant TBI.
Yeah, it hasn't been the most fun, but I tell you what, it'll be 5 years in October, and I'd say after the first 2 years, once I went on disability and once my ex wasn't part of the picture anymore because she wasn't really helping me.
Yeah.
Then I got rid of those two stressors, and I was actually starting to make progress. Then it made the most difference in my treatment plan. But yeah, then I went through all these different therapies. Like there's so many different types of therapies out there: vision therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Whatever it is, I've probably tried it. So it's definitely a process. And this, I looked at your LinkedIn. I'm like, I think she's a PT. So
I haven't updated my LinkedIn in a while, which is bad.
It's overrated. First of all, LinkedIn's supposed to be how you find jobs. It's been so much more than that, and it's all people, like circle jerk. Hey, applaud me! Look what I did. No.
Yeah.
It's all about where can I get the next job. That's all I use it for. But yeah, I mean, after 5 years, I kind of figured out who I am as a new person because I can't go back to the old person. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But I'm still a triathlete. I'm just not as fast as I used to be. And I don't know if that directly relates to the TBI, but it is what it is. If I'm never going to be that fast again, I've accepted that. It is.
Yeah.
Part of, having a TBI is learning acceptance. And it's really hard early on because you're like, I was just this person. What do you mean I can't be this person anymore?
Have you noticed like a big shift kind of in your like personality or say like, and then another question on that, like when you're say doing a workout or something, like your ability to like focus during the workout or like if you're going fast on the bike? Yeah, I get like, like kind of what's changed. What changes do you see?
Well, as a focus, I've done Zwift a lot, but I've noticed that it's harder for me to stay on Zwift. I just can't keep myself on the bike for those really long rides, but it's harder for me to get out and do them too. Plus, the PTSD kind of freaks me out a little bit. So that, and but for one thing, I have poor tracking ability. So any potholes, sticks, shit like that in the road, I won't see it until I hit it. That odds are that's going to cause a crash. So that's why I can't do night workouts anymore because prior to my injury, I used to love getting up at 4 a.m., doing all my stuff before work, and then going to work. There's nobody on the road. There's no one to hit you. You got a headlight on, you're fine.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is, but I eventually got to find my groove back on Zwift again and get used to it. And it's left me kind of unprepared for triathlons now. Like I did my first one last weekend. It's like, ooh, that was not good. That was probably my slowest 70.3 ever. It's like, all right, but hey,
yeah.
So what's your first race going to be, or what's the first race you're hoping it's going to be as a pro? You're going to stick to the shorter stuff?
So we're a little bit all over the place. So a lot of people don't actually know this because I hadn't posted anything about it. This was a little bit of a disaster. We went down to Florida a couple of weeks ago, so that I could race St. Anthony's triathlon.
Okay.
But our goal was to have me swim and bike and then pull out of the run because I actually have not done a continuous overground run since June, which is 11 months. And as a PT, I could not
you could not clear yourself ethically.
I could not clear myself to say your first overground run is going to be like an all-out 10K on pavement. Because I've really just been doing like body weight support running. So on like an Alter G, luckily we have an Alter G at work. And then like some walk runs like on grass or on turf. But I was still having some pain with that. And, when I signed up for the race, when I'd reached out to the race director and stuff to get into the field, I thought that I would be in a better place. So we went and the goal was just swim, bike, and then pull out. But it was like, I just hadn't stepped on a start line in so long. And it was like, I just need to get in there and I just need to practice. So I swam and I swam up towards the front of the race. So that was good. Then I got on the bike and this was, I tend to have like the weirdest things happen to me all the time. I mean, I could write a book about all of the strange things that have happened to me, but so I'm on the bike and I'm riding and I'm like hitting my power numbers and my speed is just like not lining up with what we had determined I would be at. And I'm hearing all this like weird squeaking and like feeling like there's some resistance, but I'm like, whatever. So I just keep, riding and riding and people are passing me like I am just not moving. And I was like, man, I guess I'm just like way worse than I realized. But I don't know. So I finished the bike. I start the run. And then at the first aid station, we said I would just jog a little bit. I pull out, use someone's phone, call Brad, tell the race directors I'm pulling out, whatever. He comes back to get me. And he was like, wow, like your bike really wasn't what I was expecting. He was like, were you hitting your numbers? And I was like, yeah, like I was hitting my numbers. So we go to my bike out of transition and Brad, my fiance, goes to roll my bike and he's like, I can't move it. Like your back wheel is completely jammed. Like I literally can't even move your bike. And I was like, really? And he was like, did you notice this? And I'm like, well, I heard like some squeaking and it did kind of feel like I was pedaling through mud, but whatever. So we end up taking my bike apart, taking the wheel off and seeing what was going on. And I must have run over something, like something sticky. And then I accumulated this wad of dirt and sand and just crap from the road on the side of my wheel, which then went all up into my frame. So my frame you basically couldn't move the wheel. So that was interesting. So it wasn't great. It wasn't a great race. We were really hoping to be able to walk away from there with a little bit better picture of where I was in the swim and the bike and how much gap to the leaders there was. And unfortunately, with that kind of mechanical, we didn't totally gauge what I wanted, but we can kind of extrapolate that slowed me down a fair amount. So, obviously, and I need to keep getting fitter, but it is what it is.
There's a great post-fight quote from Mike Tyson that I found in triathlon, applies to almost every race. Everybody's got a game plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, that was like, but I mean, I had never had that happen in a race. And ultimately, like, if I was going to choose a race for it to happen in, I was going to pull out anyway. So might as well it made it easier for me to pull out because I wasn't in a good position. So and we move on.
Them's the breaks. So since you're moving on, what's next? What do you see next on tap then? At least.
So we don't want to put anything on my schedule yet until my ankle is a little bit better. But ideally, I mean, where my skill set would lie, I think, is kind of more in like the 70.3. I'm very good at hanging out at my threshold for like a very, very long time. That's kind of, I've come from a swimming background. Like I swam in college, and, you know, like my best sets would be ones where we were just holding our threshold for like 2 hours, basically, you know, just repeats where you're just threshold for a couple of hours. That's like kind of where I'm good at the bike. So we think ultimately that's where that's the direction I want to go in. I'm really, really hoping to be able to do, you know, to be able to do something by the end of the summer there. Before that, I'm not totally sure. The game plan right now is to get healthy. And then when I feel like I'm in a good place and I'm running overground, like not walk runs, you know, like consistent runs, continuous runs, then we're going to put together my schedule for the end of the summer. But hopefully we'll be starting racing in July.
That's probably not that bad because I mean, you know, racing kind of sort of starts outside those outliers in April, you know, beginning of May. You get a couple of races between May and June, and like July is, you know, towards the middle, and you get more on the back end. So,
yeah. And then I need to wrap up my season by the end of September because I'm getting married in the middle of October. So we want to be done by that. We're going to get married, go on our honeymoon, and just, you know, put triathlon to the back burner. So I'm going to have a little bit of an abbreviated season, hopefully, assuming I can get healthy. But, you know, if I can get in any races, I will be happy. So
would it be better for you to like kind of, I don't want to say put it on the back burner, but more of use this as a try on air to see where you're at, is like with benchmarks rather than as like a full competitive season and aiming to compete as in like I want to try to get on podiums start of next season?
yeah, I mean, we definitely have more of like a long-term approach of like, what can we like learn this season, right? So like by me hoping to be able to jump into a 70.3 by the end of the year, I mean, that is ambitious, to be honest, like given where I am with my ankle. But like the goal of that race would be more like just learn as much as I can. So when we go into the off season, we know exactly like what needs to like what did I struggle with? Like how to, you know, I mean, I really haven't raced more than 2 hours. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to learn. So, I mean, this season is really, you know, like if I jump into a 70.3, it's really just going to be to see what I need to work on. You know, I mean, there's a ton of really fast girls, you know, I mean, and, you know, people who are, you know, been healthy and training and they're fast, you know, I think it would be just like naive of me, I think, to think that I'm going to place up at the top this year. I would like to be in a good place next year, but I think this year we have to just kind of be a little bit honest with where I'm at and just kind of see what we can get out of it for more of like a big, like a long-term approach.
Do you think you're able to do that better than other people because you're a PT? Whereas other people are like outside of healthcare are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on it. Not naive, oblivious or ignorant to it. Like they kind of like don't realize the ramifications of what their actions are and then just jump right back into it. Kind of like how I ran a marathon 4 months after getting hit by a Tahoe going 60 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh. If you were my patient, I would not have recommended that. Well, I'm sure your PT did not recommend that.
She doesn't know, it doesn't hurt her.
But I mean, I would definitely say, I mean, you know, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of injuries in my career. And that's kind of a whole a whole other thing. So, and I know my body like pretty well. And obviously as a PT, like I have, you know, a good understanding of tissue healing and timeline and what different kind of injuries mean, like what your treatment options are. So yeah, I mean, it does help me, you know, to be able to look at a situation and be like honest with myself, like, okay, like, you know, if I'm dealing with this right now, I'm not going to be continuous running tomorrow. And like, I just started walk runs again. So like, I know how long I need to do walk runs before I can start doing continuous stuff, before I can then start building, before I could add speed. Like I'm able, like, I know, like I know what that means, you know?
Yeah, well, back to my marathon. My ex is a 20-year, she's a physician extender and she's an athletic trainer. She didn't tell me no. So if she would have said no,
Yeah.
I would have listened.
Yeah.
So, but I did it anyway. It wasn't pretty. It was like 3:48. So I survived.
That's pretty good for getting hit by a truck right before.
The only bone I actually broke was a finger. And I don't even remember which one it was. And they didn't find it for the first 6 weeks.
I'm assuming you had to take some serious time off though of training. I mean, because I even think about the amount of time that like concussion just, you know, I mean, a concussion is a mild TBI, but like the concussion patients need to take off, you know, of physical activity. So I would assume you were going into that not on a lot of
Started 2 weeks
training.
later. I started training again 2 weeks later, slowly, like runs and stuff. And at first, I was back in the pool more than anything. Then I was doing spins on Zwift after I bought my Wahoo, and then I started running again. So it was between 2 and 4 weeks between I started all doing all three sports again.
Wow, that is a quick return.
It is, but you know what the funny thing is, right? Where I'm at now, I during COVID, I kind of like I checked out after
Yeah.
March hit, and I was at the pool at Georgia Tech, and I asked them like, it was March 16th or whatever. I'm like, are you guys going to be open next week? They're like, we don't know. And then
Yeah.
mentally, I'm like, this is going to be a long time. So I over the next month, I kind of just stopped doing stuff, and I started doing this stuff right here between the TBI video log and stuff.
Yeah.
I was training, and when I came back, I was slower than I was before. And right now, I'm slower than I was my first when I started training for my first race, which is beyond me. I don't know how I could get slower than when I had no activity going into it. So you got an answer to that one. I'm all ears, but I don't know how that happened.
Well, maybe you were still carrying out training from your previous cycle and you had a really long taper.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but like
But it also, I mean, I feel like things ebb and flow though, right? It's like, you know, I feel like you go through times where like, you know, like you're nailing workouts and your power is great and things are clicking and training is clicking, you know, and then you hit, you know, like some downturns where like, you know, kind of have like a bunch of mediocre workouts or like not great stuff, you know, when you're kind of in a funk, but
I've never
yeah.
used a coach until now, and I got a slot in Challenge Roth for next year. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll finally use a coach, and maybe
Yeah.
that's back into it. But doing it on my own is one thing. It's like, okay, mainly for the fact that coaches are expensive. But like, if I'm going to go all the way to Roth and race that kind of race, then I'm going to get a coach. So maybe
Yeah.
that'll fix things. Who knows?
Yeah.
So, what are your long-term goals? And I'll get you out of here on this one. What are your long-term goals for being a pro? I mean, obviously, you're still young. You're what, about 25 years old? No,
Older
29.
than that.
29. I forgot. I read that.
No, I'm not 20. I was 29 a couple of years ago.
Really? Then I'm reading good stuff on the internet.
What are you? Is there anything written about me on the internet?
Yeah, there is. Let's see. I was looking at it because I was looking at your athletes, and it said your age.
I'm 32
Oh,
as of a couple weeks ago.
oh, okay. So you're only a few years younger than me.
Yeah, so I mean, and you know, I mean, what's challenging, you know, in women's sports is, you know, that your athletic, your peak athletic years
Yeah, your window's shorter than mine, and it's sooner.
correlate with your years of wanting to have kids. So, you know, things are, and obviously, I qualified for my pro card, in a couple of different ways when I was 29 to 28 and 29. So in the 2019 season, took it in 2020. I took it when I was 29, and this is obviously just not how I envisioned things going, right? I mean, what I would say, like in terms of like what my goals are in the sport, is like really to feel like I can have a season that I feel like I am able to like start seeing my potential, because I know that I'm sitting on like a lot of potential. I definitely have a lot of natural run talent that we haven't been able to get to because of all the injuries and everything. So, I think it would be to like be able to have a season that I can look back and be like, yes, like I was like really dialed in that year. And I feel like we were actually able to have me run, train, and race. And like, yeah, I guess a year where I really felt I trained and raced to my abilities, which has not been the case the last couple of years.
And being a PT and having those resources at work will help you get back to that at least sooner than the normal person would have.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have like a fantastic, sorry, I have notifications coming up. I definitely have like a fantastic team around me. Like I work with two different PTs. One, she does a lot of my like orthopedic stuff. So like she's working with me for my ankle right now. She worked with me for my hip. She was actually my clinical instructor when I was a student. So yeah, so I was her student during my internship. And then another one of my colleagues works with me on, I have a lot of issues with like diaphragm cramping and spasming. That's a whole other thing. But she works with me on that and a lot of my like GI issues post-COVID. And then I work with a great physiatrist, Adam 1040. He works with a lot of great athletes in the area. And yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky with the people I have around me for sure.
Being in Boston, do you work out inside or outside? Because obviously it's cold as shit, and for like shitty weather for what, like 8, 9 months out of the year.
Oh, not that much.
Wow, so it's always gray. So
Um, a combination. So, I mean, I definitely use the trainer a fair amount in the winter, for sure, because you also have to be careful, right? On the road, on your bike, if it's
now you're in
icy.
Boston. Are you like in the middle of Boston where the roads are like, this thin and like no sidewalks and stuff?
We're in Somerville. So if you're looking at the Boston area and here's the Charles River, Boston proper is below, and then there's Cambridge and Somerville, and we live in Somerville. So being in Somerville, we're a little bit closer to being out of the city. Like I can be on decent roads in probably about 15 minutes or so, 15, 20. I mean, not fantastic roads for probably 30 minutes, but it's easier than being, I think, in Boston proper. But I mean, it's still city riding until you get out. And then we're not too far from, nice roads with farms and
All these
pretty
rich
scenery.
parks and stuff. It's like, oh, this is kind of like normal suburbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, so I mean, it's not a terrible area to train. And then a little bit out of the city, there are, a lot of trail systems and stuff. So soft surfaces for running. I swim with a really fantastic masters team here, with a lot of very, very accomplished swimmers on it. So I get pushed every day when I'm there. So yeah, I mean, I definitely we have our training set up pretty dialed in.
Nice. Well, hey, thanks for letting me interview you. I appreciate it.
Sure. I don't think I'm that highly sought after for interviews.
I'll tell you what. All right. But before I started doing all this, I talked to a guy that I knew at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is the major newspaper in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I've been here 12 years, and over the years, I always meet someone there every couple of years in random places. And then they introduced me to acquaintances. So I met a sports journalist, right? He does the 4 major sports, not the one that he doesn't care about ours and everything. So we were talking, and I said, I want to do this as kind of like a supplement to my traumatic brain injury video log, because either I'm interviewing people from triathlon or people from brain injury, but those are both how I identify myself. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do with this. And I said, I'm going to talk to triathletes, what should I do? He's like, don't talk to elites. I said, he tells me, he's like, look, because we were at a track meet or whatever. He's like, you see elites over there? It's like, they have all those people around them. They're good for sound bites. The people who are back of the pack, middle of the pack, it's like, those and people who are up and coming, they're a lot better for interviews because they have just as much to say as an elite does, but nobody's asking them in it. That's why you should. So
Good advice.
yeah. So it's like, like, okay. And that's what I've been successful, because like, I remember the one elite that I really talked to, Ellie Salhas, it was kind of exactly what he said it would be. Just, she's better at sound bites than it is an actual interview. And that's why I enjoy it. It's like, oh, they have a lot more to say. And they're, because, I don't want to call you a slower pro, but backpack, middle of the pack, a lot of them tend to have day jobs too. So they have a little bit more depth to them. They're not a one-trick pony.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that once I can actually train, I won't be a back of the pack or middle of the pack.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. It would be a lot of fun watching you do that. Thanks again, Emily. I appreciate it.
No problem. Nice to talk to you.